We have open source developers going to prison. We had the Blanche memo go out at the beginning of the year, which said, hey, we're not going to target these cases. And lo and behold, in both Samourai and Tornado Cash, they went through with it.
The great financial crisis, you saw the impacts of it on your life. That's what really turned my whole entire worldview upside down. I thought I wanted to work for the government, be a diplomat, But after that, I said, absolutely not. This whole entire thing is rotten. So I know that the great financial crisis was a huge part of your story as well.
The grift that was going on, the bailouts, the picking and choosing of winners and losers, really tried to understand, like, how could it get this bad? And found Bitcoin. Was like, oh, central control is the problem here. The Snowden leaks, COVID, and that was extremely radicalizing as well. Like, how can our government be this corrupt? Don't get complacent and just forget that these things happen. Whether it's the financial crisis, COVID, central banks, big industry is really putting over the common man. If we don't speak out and get justice for these things, they're just going to continue to do it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Bitcoin News channel. I'm your host, Rob Wallace, and today I'm very grateful to be joined by Marty Bent, founder of TFTC, managing partner at VC 1031, and one of the most respected voices in all of Bitcoin. Marty, how are we doing today?
Rob, I'm doing great. Had a productive Thursday morning, dropped the boys off at school, picked up the dry cleaning, got a lot of work done, and then hopping into this conversation. So,
being a Bitcoiner and a dad, it's two jobs, but it's one job, right? I mean, it's all one mission.
Right. Doing it for the kids.
For the kids, for the last name. Absolutely. Okay, so let's start off. We're in the last month of 2025. It has been a pivotal year. You, as one of the leading voices in Bitcoin media, you've seen it all. You've talked to everybody. So I want to get your perspective on a year in review. Let's start off positive. And the answers to this could be a person, a podcast, a company, an NGO, anything you want. But let's start off nice. Bitcoiner of the year. Who did the most, in your opinion, in 2025 to push Bitcoin forward?
Wow. Putting me on the spot here. Bitcoiner of the year. Who would that be? Let's see. That's a great question. There's so many. There's so many to pull from. Let's do a little reverse engineering here.
There you go.
We're about flat on price. So it's been flat price here. So if you're looking for somebody to pump the price, we can't pick somebody who did that. And what I like to focus on when the price is relatively flat or down is who's actually building infrastructure in the back end. So I mean, Jack Dorsey, and it's hard to put it on Jack because he's got an amazing team below him working across the block, family of companies. But I guess I'm very impressed with what Block has done this year, I guess, as maybe not a person, but a company of the year in terms of what they've done with the rollout of proto mining, the Square point of sales, Bitcoin integration. BitKey's made a lot of improvements with privacy, usability. Cash App obviously is leaning back into Bitcoin, and I think that is critical infrastructure, and sort of looks like they're going broad across the spectrum. So like company of the year, Block is certainly coming to mind.
No, that's good right there, man. I agree with you. I think that what Block did this year is that they have all, of course, these different facets of their company, but they finally all integrated them into one Bitcoin mission, it feels like. And now they're all aligned, because what I've seen online is like Cash App used to fight with Square, right, for resources and company attention and all that stuff. But now everybody's aligned. They're working together. The incentives are proper. So Bitcoin is the mission there. And Jack's finally, it's like he's taken back control of his baby, and this thing is moving forward in full speed ahead. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, it is really cool to see. So again, and then the other Jack Mallers, I think, I know we'll touch on it later, but I think in terms of impact, and I see this up close and personal because we're very in the trenches with the strike team at 1031, but the Jack Mahler show, I know is just from talking to Jack and watching that Monday night show grow, I think he is actually getting the message out to younger generations. And so we have Company of the Year, Block really turning the corner. And then person of the year, and we could talk about this later, but something I've been really focusing on this year or thinking about is how do we reach the younger generations? Because I think that's critically important. I think Jack Mahlers has done an incredible job of that with the Jack Mahlers show as well. It's gotten insanely popular throughout the year. I was on an episode in the beginning of January, and it was, I think it was doing a few thousand views at that point, and now it's a pretty popular show and reaching the audience that desperately needs Bitcoin.
Yeah, he's got a way with words. He can go for an hour straight just going through tabs and just tie the narrative together very, very well, succinctly, and in language that the kids connect with. So, I mean, you could say, the Jack Mahlers show could be the rookie of the year.
I like that. I like that. I like rookie of the year.
For Jack Mahlers show. He's not a rookie, but the show is rather new. So, yeah. All right, let's put him down for Jack Mahlers show's rookie of the year. Okay, here's an interesting one. So it came out yesterday. The Economist voted on the word of the year. Do you know what it was?
Slop.
Slop.
Yeah.
And I mean, could you say that Plebslop was the word of the year for the Bitcoin community?
It certainly has gained in prominence. Plebslop, it really overtook Paper Bitcoin Summer for maybe phrase of the year. Funnily enough, coming from the same tabloid.
Paper Bitcoin Summer is a part of Plebslop.
Yes, it's a subcategory of Plebslop. So yeah, I think Plebslop is definitely word of the year here in Bitcoin land. And there's a lot of slop.
How do you define it? How do you define Plebslop?
Just engagement farming, I guess. And I'm guilty of it. I've put out plenty of Plebslop in my days. I guess the Bugle, I guess they would define it as low-level plebs bringing their vulgarity to the conversation, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really has to do with being fast and loose with the truth, right? In a lot of ways, being super hyperbolic, Moon Boy-esque, I think is and yeah, anybody in the media is somewhat guilty of it, right? We have to do it a little bit in order to draw clicks and attention and try to get people in the door. But there's also some that take it a little too far.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, hand up.
Yeah,
somebody was calling for Super Cycle at some point earlier this year. I'm guilty of it as well. We can all cave to the gravity of Plebslop every once in a while.
Okay, well then that brings us to the next question. Was 2025 the cycle top?
That's a good. I mean, again, I think I've learned not to call tops or bottoms, but I don't. If you're asking me what my gut, heart, and brain say, all three of them are thinking no. It feels like it doesn't feel like that 126, 125, whatever price we hit earlier this year is the top. I feel like momentum is only getting stronger heading into 2026, and there's not a bunch of retail exuberance. There's no irrational exuberance that I've seen. I actually think this price consolidation is really healthy in the long run. So I wouldn't be surprised. My probability is well over 50% that the cycle top is not in.
Yeah, I mean, how lucky would we be if 2025 was the actual bear year, right? If this consolidation and all the developments and infrastructure build out that we had within 2025, positive developments with the government, you could say, and banks. If this was the bear year, then we're pretty lucky. So let's take it. And another interesting thing that I looked at last night is that if you price Bitcoin in Swiss francs, it hit 100K at Trump's inauguration. And then the 126 top in dollars was another 100K top in Swiss francs. So yeah, we haven't had a bull year at all, really, in when you price it in a different currency, and just goes to show you how much we have been sort of had our purchasing power robbed from us over here in America with the dollar in just this last year.
Yeah, and many people also forget that Bitcoin went from, what was it? It was up like 300% over the course since 2022, way more than that. Did like an 8x, 9x from the lows of 2022 into the beginning of this year. So that was a good 3-year run. If we're going to cool off and drop 30% over the course of 12 months. That's really healthy, in my opinion.
Yeah, and one thing that brought us up to the heights of plus 120 or so was, of course, the digital asset treasuries, DATs, paper Bitcoin summer, as you previously mentioned. So yeah, now there's over 150 of them. If you had to guess in 1 year from now, at the end of 2026, how many of those will still survive? What percentage of that 150 will still be a Bitcoin treasury company?
If the price continues to go up, if the cycle top isn't in, I think a lot of them will survive and persist based off of those tailwinds, the structural tailwind of the price going up, and those companies being sort of tied to the price of Bitcoin proxies for it. But in the long run, I've been saying this all year, like I think there's going to be a Pareto distribution of companies that are successfully able to enact that strategy and stick out amongst the crowd. So I think there'll be a lot of consolidation. I think we're already beginning to see it too. You have a bunch of these DAT companies beginning to signal that they want to acquire operating businesses, add revenue. I think the MicroStrategy play of just tapping capital markets and creating these credit products with relatively small revenue streams supporting it is going to be an anomaly. I have my qualms with some of the way in which MicroStrategy does things, but I think they'll be successful in the long run.
Well, can you elaborate on those qualms?
I think they should have more of a focus on controlling their stack. Like obviously, I think they should lean into Bitcoin's native properties more. Like I think they should have multi-sig addresses that they're holding their Bitcoin in. They shouldn't hold a lot of it with Coinbase. And then from a marketing perspective, I think this idea of Bitcoin solely as digital capital, that you should never spend and never sell and die with your Bitcoin, burn your keys. I don't like that narrative. I don't think it's good for Bitcoin at the end of the day. I certainly sympathize with the idea behind it. And obviously it does play a part. Obviously Bitcoin is digital capital, super collateral. The best savings vehicle we've ever come into contact with as human history is certainly true, but the neglect of the other side of the coin, pun intended, of Bitcoin as this payments network that people should be using as money is something that I disagree with.
100%. I'm on board with you in that regard. Bitcoin needs to be used, experimented with, spent a little bit, replaced. You know, if you don't know how to use the thing, then you're missing out on the magic. And without velocity, the Bitcoin network, it sort of ossifies and becomes easy to capture. So we need to use it. We need to move it and make sure the individuals, Bitcoiners, know how to do that. But maintaining on the Bitcoin treasury subject, did you sense that it was like a mania back in May, June, or did you think that we were entering like this new paradigm? Because so many people were wrapped up in it, especially around the time of like the Bitcoin conference in Vegas and everything.
Yeah, no, it reminded me a lot of the 2017 trend, which was you just add blockchain to your company name or release a PR saying that you're exploring blockchain technology. There was the infamous Long Island iced tea company that pivoted to Long Island blockchain. And yeah, I mean, there certainly is an opportunity there, but in terms of the Bitcoin treasury strategy, but I think you have to be hyper-focused. You have to have like a elite team leading that strategy. And I think everybody was just hopping on a trend, saw easy money, and decided to hop in the game. And I think there are right ways to do it, wrong ways to do it. Bitcoin treasury strategy specifically. And I think a lot of people were just trying to ride a hype wave, and that hype wave has come back down to earth. And I think a lot of people are having a lot of introspection of what are we doing here? How do we actually succeed with these strategies?
Yeah, it was quick. It was a quick turnaround. But here we are back in reality. So then that brings us to villain of the year. Who do you think was most antagonistic to Bitcoin in 2025?
I think the Department of Justice, obviously with the Samourai wallets plea deal and then sentencing. I think that whole case did not get enough attention this year. We're trying to bring a lot of attention to it in recent weeks, obviously, as Keon and Bill await the time in which they have to report to prison for 5 years. And I think if you look at that case, particularly, you can look at Tornado Cash case as well. These are pretty heavy precedents that are not do not bode well for freedom and privacy, financial privacy specifically, moving forward. And so, despite the fact that everybody's excited about the Trump administration and their posturing towards the industry, if you look at the actions of the Department of Justice and in the administration's defense, this is an overhang from the Biden administration. But we had the Blanche memo go out at the beginning of the year, which said, hey, we're not going to target these cases. And lo and behold, in both Samourai and Tornado Cash, they went through with it. And we have open source wallet developers building non-custodial tools going to prison for conspiracy to money launder, which FinCEN explicitly said that Samourai Wallet specifically was not participating in due to the fact that they did not control the funds of users leveraging Samourai's technology. And so that's a bad precedent. I think that will be an easy villain of the year.
Absolutely. We've got about 2 weeks plus until the Samourai devs need to report to prison. As you said, there is currently a petition going around trying to garner 100,000 signatures to get Trump to pardon them for all they did was write code. I think we are currently around 3,000 or so signatures at the moment. We'll put the link to that petition in the description of this YouTube video. And I really urge anybody who's watching this who cares about privacy and justice to go ahead and sign that. Just takes a couple minutes and is really important.
It really is. I mean, I think everybody's caught up in the Treasury companies, JP Morgan conspiracies. Maybe we could touch on that later, excuse me. Price, complaining about price, but there's this story is massive, in my opinion, in terms of the effects it could have on the industry, particularly here in the United States. Like if this is a precedent and future DAs, attorney generals feel emboldened by this precedent to go attack software developers and ultimately end users of that software, it's not going to be good for self-sovereign usage of Bitcoin.
And yeah, do you think that we've gotten too lax, that we're not vigilant enough anymore right now in 2025 with all the wins we've had earlier in the year?
Definitely a part of the industry community, whatever you want to call it. But I do think that cypherpunk, hardcore, private, sovereign, fuck the state ethos exists and is alive and well and arguably stronger than ever in the pockets, particularly of the people building these tools. Like if you look at what's happening, second layer solutions like Lightning, Arc, Liquid, eCash, there's a ton of progress in terms of usability and ease of use, usability, interoperability for self-sovereign privacy tech. But I think the louder narratives, inarguably, this year were about Treasury companies, price, institutions, and the government sort of posturing that they're leaning into this industry.
So then let's go into tech. What was your biggest aha moment in terms of new Bitcoin tech in 2025?
I think this was the year of Lightning settling into a perfect product market fit of this interconnective tissue between other second layers. So obviously we had talked about eCash. Like I've been using Macadamia Wallet, which leverages the Cashew protocol, which is built on the Cashew protocol as a daily driver. It's incredible UX. It's a mint, an eCash wallet. You choose your mint and you can put spending cash in there, spend privately, and then pay Lightning invoices trivially. You just point, click, you're going eCash to Lightning, paying an invoice. I've seen the launch of the Arc mainnet this year. You had Second, and Arc Systems launched their Arc protocols, their Arc service providers as well. similarly there, like the interoperability between Arc, eCash, Arc Lightning is somewhat seamless because of Lightning finding that product market fit as this connective tissue. And I think that's massive. A lot of people like to shit on the Lightning network and shit on the payments use case of Bitcoin, saying it'll never work. Lightning's too wonky, but the haters, I think, do not understand what's going on behind the scenes. And I think the progress that's been made this year, specifically, and the light bulbs going off for builders, particularly people building on these disparate second layer protocols, are going off, and they're getting really excited about the fact, like, hey, we can build here and our users can interact with your protocol too, which just makes UX incredibly impressive, I guess I would say.
And so the benefits of eCash are very clear in that it's much more private than anything else, right? But what are the benefits of Arc?
Arc, I think the benefits that you can do more expressive sort of smart contracting, payments, use cases off-chain.
I wanted to briefly interrupt today's interview to give a big shout out to our lead sponsor, Rhino Bitcoin. Rhino is the all-in-one Bitcoin super app built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. Buy or sell instantly. Send sats anywhere on the Lightning Network. Withdraw straight to cold storage. Even turn sats into gift cards or link to a Casa multisig, all within one sleek interface. And Rhino is just warming up. Soon, you'll pay bills, borrow against your Bitcoin, and save for retirement, all without leaving the app. Download Rhino at rhinobitcoin.com or tap the link in the description below. Use promo code Bitcoin News and Rhino will drop you $10 of free Bitcoin into your account today. Secure your stack with Rhino Bitcoin and enjoy the rest of the video.
Arc mainnet launched, and obviously there are scaling limitations that haven't been reached yet, but they will be reached in the future. But I think one of the use cases that really stuck out to me for Arc is basically making so you can manage Lightning channel liquidity without having to do on-chain transactions. And so bettering the user experience of liquidity management for Lightning node operators is a massive benefit. And the fact that you can do that without having to do on-chain transactions is massive. And it's early days for Arc, but Alex Berg and the team at Arcade, they've talked at length about the more expressive smart contracting things that you'll be able to do within Arc protocol. And I think this year at the Baltic Honey Badger, the fact that they sort of ninja launched Arc as the back end of all the BTC Pay servers at the conference, and users were none the wiser that that's what was powering the point of sale systems at that conference. It was an incredible validation of the fact that, like, hey, this thing actually works.
Yeah, well, one reason I like listening to you and Rabbit Hole Recap, of course, is the tech perspective and the way that you can communicate that. And in terms of communication, you, of course, have done dozens upon dozens of podcasts this year. If there was a new listener who had not listened to TFTC before, and you had to pick one episode from 2025, where would you steer them?
One episode, again, have to pick. It's like picking your favorite child.
I know.
It's impossible. Trying to think one that really stuck out to me. I mean, just in terms of like how impressive he's been. I think I started recording with him in the middle of last year, and we've done 5 or 6 episodes. But Mel Madison has been pretty prescient in his calls, and so if you go back and listen to the first episode we recorded this year, I believe it was right around the tariff tantrum, Liberation Day. The calls he made then have a lot of them have come true. And so in terms of like, actually, that's one thing I try to do at TFTC is do like a retrospective, like, okay, what has somebody said on the show, and like how much of that actually came true. And Mel is one of those individuals where it's like, wow, it's actually impressive. He called a lot of this stuff.
And did you actually find Mel? I think the first time I heard of him was on TFTC.
Yeah, Mel, I think I found him when he had less than 1,000 followers, and he found me. He DM'd me, and that's one thing I try to do as much as possible is answer as many DMs as possible. And he DM'd me about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years ago now at this point, saying he'd written this book, Quaz, listened to the show, and thought we would have a good conversation, and went back and forth DMs and email, and I was like, yeah, let's have a conversation. And now he's pretty popular.
He is. He's all over Pomp and all that. Yeah. And I went out and bought and read Quaz after I saw the episode you did with him. So it works. It works. Cool. So yes, that was the year in review section. I think you gave some great answers there. Lots of fun. I know it's not that easy to pick your favorites out of these things, but had to do it. Had to ask. So then let's transition over to the big question right here. When you look at Bitcoin, I mean, when it started, you could say a lot of the devs and people around it were Gen Xers, right? Mm-hmm. And then we had millennials pretty much grew up with it. And we've been able to create the memes and ride the culture to a certain extent. And now we're at a point where boomers are getting onboarded with ETFs and TradFi. But the missing piece is Gen Z. You look at Bitcoin news demographics over on Twitter, our followers of 25 to 18 is 7%, right? Mm-hmm. And the vast majority is 25 to 45. But we're missing that secret ingredient, the youth. And we need the youth. So what's your take on Gen Z right now, and why aren't they Bitcoin fanatics in this crazy time of inflation?
I wonder it's because they don't have any money. And I don't know, Gen Z, from my experience, my touch points with that particular generation seems to be sort of bifurcated into two groups. You have the clout chasing streamers, pranksters, like TikTok houses, if you will. And then you have like the serious, what I would deem to be more serious, like hardcore, pissed off, like we need to return to tradition. And I think that latter group may be more tuned into what Bitcoin can provide. But at the end of the day, I don't think, unless you're a massive TikToker, OnlyFans model, if you will, or streamer, you have a ton of money. And obviously the job opportunities aren't what they were when we were getting out of college, and they weren't even great post 2008. Maybe a lot of them just don't have enough money to get into it, or they feel like it's not worth even attempting. I think unit bias definitely plays a role. They see Bitcoin at wherever it is today, 92, 93,000, and saw it up at 126,000, said, hey, I missed the boat. And I think there's a morass that generation is in, specifically, a mental morass, if you will, that maybe they're not sort of looking for these solutions. And I think about it as somebody who has 3 young children in Gen Alpha. And that's what I wonder, is is Bitcoin adoption for the youth going to skip a generation, skip Gen Z, and go straight to Gen Alpha? Because I think about my boys, and the oldest, he knows what Bitcoin is. He has a Bitcoin wallet. He does chores for Bitcoin. He watches the Tuttle Twins Bitcoin episodes and really picks up what they're putting down. So yeah, like our demos, seriously, similarly at TFTC, if you look at YouTube and X, our main demo is older millennials, then it goes Gen X, then it goes boomers, then it goes younger millennials, and then we have like 1 to 2% of Gen Z in our audience. Yeah,
I think a big problem is the nihilism, right? Financial nihilism. People, as you said, people think that they missed the boat, but it's up to us to really communicate the point that no, it's still early, right? If you're a Gen Z and you're making an average wage, you can still put money towards Bitcoin, and it can make a huge difference in your life 5-10 years from now.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I mean, the other side of our industry, I wouldn't even consider it our industry, but crypto, like meme coins, DeFi, all of that. There's this just basically environment of like, hey, you can make it all in one trade. And I think there's a lot of and hey, I putting myself in their shoes when I was in my young 20s, first getting into Bitcoin, I certainly fell prey to the siren calls of altcoins in the 2013, 2014 era, and understand that impulse to go win it all in one trade. And so maybe it's just a time dilation thing, and they're in their early 20s to mid 20s now, just going through that learning process, and maybe they'll wake up in a couple of years and realize, hey, I need to start saving and just approaching this more methodically and not try to win it all in one trade.
And another thing you mentioned is that there's a faction of the Gen Z that is the return group, right?
Hmm.
And sort of the mascot of that group is Nick Fuentes, and
Hmm.
he's going around. He's making the circuit now. He's more and more accepted in mainstream circles, at least to speak on the airwaves. But he recently just said that he believes in fiat, right? How can a dude who's you can't argue with the fact that he's extremely smart, right? How does he not get Bitcoin?
Yeah, I saw a clip of him, another questionable clip where he was saying he prefers order over free markets, which obviously order is important, and we've gotten away from that, and it's very unfortunate. We have this sort of implicit agreement with our government that, hey, we will pay taxes, we will do these things, but you need to enforce the rule of law and make sure that there's justice in our world. And we've gotten, particularly here in America, we've gotten far away from that. Like the rule of law doesn't matter in many aspects of what's going on in America today. And it's incredibly unfortunate because it creates this chaos and people want orders. And I've been talking a lot about this over the last few months. It seems like in America, the political situation has just been thrust to both extremes. The Nick Fuentes right, which I think to build on the Bitcoin comment, like I believe in fiat. I wouldn't be surprised if he's like, we can't have Bitcoin because it's like this free floating currency that nobody can really control, and we need order. So I believe in the ability to sort of rule by decree to bring order to the world. And then you have the left side of the argument when you have this horseshoe theory of politics, the far left, overt democratic socialism, eventually communism. We need to seize the means of production, tax the rich out the wazoo to bring order and fairness back to the world. But I think both of those perspectives are wrong. And specifically to Nick's comment about Bitcoin, I think that if I were to guess, based off of comments I've seen him make, stems from his desire to bring order to the United States. And if Bitcoin's this uncontrolled monetary system, it makes that harder, I guess. Maybe he believes it makes it harder. I don't think that's the case. That would be my assumption of why he said that.
Well, what's funny is that he needed Bitcoin, right? He was canceled off of every single payment processor, and the only way that he made money for years was receiving Bitcoin for merch and chat payments and all that stuff. So it's kind of befuddling. But he definitely has the hearts and minds of a lot of Gen Z. And so the question is, how do we communicate with them, right? If you were to start a media company today aimed at 18 to 25-year-olds with your media experience now, what would you focus on? What avenues, and how would you reach them?
I think you got to meet them where they are. Like the medium is the content in certain regards, and I'm an old dog. It's gonna be hard to teach me new tricks. So like getting on TikTok and doing those types of videos is not my game. I think Julian Figaro has been doing a really good job. I've seen he's launched that YouTube channel where he's doing higher production sort of mix of man on the street and explainer videos, and I think stuff like that is really impactful. I think Julian's done a good job of sort of matching the message with the medium, which is important.
Absolutely. Julian has really hit it out of the park this year, getting hundreds of thousands of views on these videos that people thought like Bitcoin explainer videos were for the past, but no, there's a hungry market. And if you present it the right way, there are new people. Of course, there's always new people that need to learn the very foundations of Bitcoin. So great job on you, Julian. But to round out the Gen Z section here, I think one thing that really made Bitcoin click with us millennials, whether you're an older millennial, middle or early millennial, is that the great financial crisis, you saw the impacts of it on your life in some way, right? Whether it was you trying to find a job right after it or your parents being affected by it, you got at least for me personally, that's what really turned my whole entire worldview upside down and realizing this financial system is corrupt from the bottom up. I thought I wanted to work for the government, be a diplomat, do something like that. But after that, I said, absolutely not. This whole entire thing is rotten. So I know that the Great Financial Crisis was a huge part of your story as well.
It was. It's actually funny. I wrote the foreword to Gradually and Then Suddenly by Parker Lewis, and had to read it, to record the reading of it for the audiobook, which should be out soon. It was a trip down memory lane because a lot of the foreword was focused on my sort of radicalization, if you will, around 2008. I was a senior in high school, taking an elective econ class, and literally the fall of 2008. And so the world was going to shit, and we were in this class, and luckily for me, the teacher, Mr. Robson, was like, gentlemen, I went to an all-boys school. We're going to focus on this. And so that semester really leaned into the financial crisis as it was unfolding, and was radicalized about how insane it was. All the grift that was going on, the bailouts, the sort of picking and choosing of favorites and losers, winners and losers. And then went to college with like this know your enemy mentality, studied econ, and really tried to understand what the problem was, like how could it get this bad, and found Bitcoin. Was like, oh, this is the problem. The ability to control money and pick winners and losers, be a central control is the problem here. We need to take control out of their hands.
Yeah, we do. And during that time, there was also, of course, the Ron Paul movement and the Fed. There's the Tea Party, of course, and Bitcoin was born into this. Unfortunately, I didn't see Bitcoin then. I was distracted by gold and silver. I thought I listened to a lot of Peter Schiff back in the day at that time. I mean, he diagnosed the problem correctly, but and some would say that he's got the right solution right now. But it took a long time for that theory to play out. Were you bit by the gold bug syndrome?
Never really. I think I always sympathized with it, but I found. So another thing that was going on during this period was like the WikiLeaks, the Snowden leaks, and that was extremely radicalizing as well. Like, how can our government be this corrupt, keeping this information from us and doing all these bad things in the name of American taxpayers? And I forget exactly what it was that like sort of tipped me to Bitcoin back in the day. I think it might have been WikiLeaks, it might have been Silk Road articles, but I really was drawn to Bitcoin at first from the tech side. I came for the tech, the fact that it was this distributed system that couldn't be controlled by anybody is what drew me in, and then became aware like, oh, there's only 21 million of these things. And even though I studied econ in college, I was indoctrinated with neoliberal Keynesianism. So I sort of had to back into the Austrian view after I found Bitcoin, found the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute, and Pierre and Michael Goldstein at the time, Daniel Krawitz, sort of writing about Bitcoin through the Austrian lens. And that's really was my foray into hard money. And obviously I'd heard Ron Paul talk about the ills of central banking, but never really connected that with sound money, with gold. For whatever reason, I was just too young to be cognizant enough to be like, oh, maybe I should focus on gold. It wasn't until I found Bitcoin, was drawn to it by the fact that it couldn't be controlled by anybody, be corrupted by anybody. And then there's just 21 million of these things. Why is that? And then you find Pierre and Bitstein writing about Bitcoin through the Austrian lens. It's like, oh, this is why. And then you read Human Action and fall deeper down the rabbit hole.
Indeed. And so let's go into some Marty lore now, right? So you went to college, studied economics. You were an analyst at a fund, right? Mm-hmm. And you were then lurking on Bitcoin Twitter for years, then started going to New York Bit Devs and got into the tech. And then in 2017 is when you started your whole entire media career, right? Mm-hmm. And so you started with the newsletter explaining Bitcoin to the people around you, and that grew very quickly, and then turned into a podcast through the help of somebody at Barstool. So I have a little bit of a Barstool background as well. I was working on a travel show for them before doing this whole Bitcoin news thing. So it's funny how those stories sort of intertwine like that. But
were you with Donnie?
Yeah, dude. I was with
Hell
Donnie
yeah.
in China.
I didn't realize that.
Dude,
Donnie's one of
I was the editor director of Donnie Does China back in the early days.
Really?
Yeah, dude.
Holy shit. It's one of my favorite. Donnie's one of my favorite. Both Donnies, Chef Donnie and the Wonton Don are two of my favorites.
The Wonton Don, dude. Yeah, I was there for the very beginning of all that, man. And then in 22 and end of 21, we were doing a travel show, Rediscovering America. And second season of that wrapped, and I said, I just need to go all into Bitcoin, and then started doing this. But yeah, tell us your Barstool tale and getting started with the audio podcast.
Yeah, so I started the newsletter in the beginning of June, and it grew pretty quickly. It was a timing thing, luck, timing. Price was going up. People were very curious to learn more about Bitcoin, and I sort of came out of my Twitter shell at the same time. I was like, all right, I'm writing this thing. If you're interested in Bitcoin, sign up for the newsletter. I'll write about it. And it grew pretty quickly, thanks to the help of some people. Pierre, Michael specifically were willing to share it in the early days, and the list grew pretty quickly. And so when about 3 weeks into the newsletter, I saw a gentleman by the name of Lewis Roberts, who's not at Barstool anymore, but he was basically their head of revenue. He was in control of bringing in revenue for Barstool. He was like their first biz dev guy. And I followed him because he's a Philly guy too. That's where I'm from. And I would always like his commentary on Philly sports. And one day I noticed that he was tweeting at Stooley. He's like, hey, you guys should buy ETH right now. And I was like, that's not a great idea. So I DM'd him and I was like, hey, Stooley here. Don't think you should be telling your audience to go ape into ETH when it's trading at like a Pico top. Like, here's a newsletter I wrote, so I had some sort of validation. Like, I may know what I'm talking about. Send him a few links. Like, hey, here's my thoughts on this. He was like, all right, you seem like you know what you're talking about. And I was unemployed at the time outside the newsletter and had a lot of free time when I was in New York. And I was basically like, hey, do you want to meet up and talk about this? And he was willing, very, very gracious with his time. Barstool was on a rocket ship at that point. And so he was willing to meet up, and we met up at the Smith and Flatiron right across from their headquarters at the time, and talked for like 2 hours about Bitcoin, trying to wrap his head around it. And at that time I was unemployed. I was like, hey, this is like Barstool. I know you guys have tried Barstool Finance before. Do you want somebody to come write about Bitcoin? And he was like, no, like, we're a sports comedy brand. Like, your shit is not going to fly with our audience. And I was like, okay. And he's like, newsletters are cool too, but like, you should start a podcast. Podcast is what's on the come up. And I was like, cool. I don't know how to do that. Can you help me? And again, he was gracious enough to say, hey, yeah, I'll help you. So Lewis, shout out to Lewis Roberts, bought me the equipment and allowed me to sneak into the Barstool offices late on Friday nights and Saturday nights and record the first episode. So that's how it started, is all because of Uncle Lou and his grace towards me, this young 26-year-old unemployed crazy person talking about Bitcoin.
No, it's amazing how things come together like that. But then you worked there, right? For like 6 months or something?
Yeah, for a cup of coffee. Again, I was unemployed. We had recorded like 4 or 5 podcast episodes. And I was like, Lewis, like, I got married earlier this year. I don't have a job. The newsletter was too small to make money at the time. I was like, I'll do whatever you need me to do. And he was like, okay, come work for me. He was, again, head of revenue. So I did podcast ad sales, selling into like Part of My Take and Foreplay and all those shows for about 6 months. And then the Great American Mining guys found me, and I jumped off that pirate ship and onto another.
Cool. Yeah. And I mean, that really set you up though for what you did in the years ahead. You got an inside look of what a real operation is in terms of podcasts, selling ads, and making a sustainable media business. So yeah, talk about that in terms of ad revenue, running a media company in 2025, and what the deal is and your perspective on it.
It's a particularly, I mean, especially in our niche. Yeah, I'm sure you know this. Like the ad revenue is extremely volatile. And it's very correlated to the Bitcoin price, and so that's obviously a lot of our revenue, a predominant amount of our revenue is ad driven, and we've probably been monetizing since 2019. So we're like 6 years into being a cash flowing business, and certainly learned my lessons throughout the years, how to structure deals and who to partner with, but most importantly. And so, yeah, I think my perspective, I'd be interested to get your perspective, but having seen what Barstool did, particularly after I left with the Penn deal and how big they were growing, I don't know, I'm always just inherently conservative. And so my view here at TFTC is just to run as lean as possible and try to do as much with a relatively small team, and then make sure that we are we're bringing in revenue via advertising, partnering with companies that we trust, that we use, that we feel comfortable recommending to others, and then performing for those advertisers, most importantly, because it doesn't make sense if we're just taking your money, we're not performing on the back end. And I'm happy to say that it seems like we're doing a good job there. But on top of that, obviously, we do podcasting 2.0. So that's beginning to become more of a material revenue stream. And that's still nothing that we could run the business on, but we've been doing that for 5 years now. I think we were one of the first 5 podcasts to put a Lightning address in our RSS feed. And it's beginning to pick up thanks to products like Fountain and other podcasting 2.0 apps. I think they're getting really good and getting more mature, and more people are becoming aware of them. So that's a small revenue driver. Obviously, we have a merch store. But one thing I'm always thinking about is like, how can we diversify revenue streams? And so this whole idea of using distribution and audience to bring a product to market has always appealed to me, and something that we're always sort of brainstorming something we can do there.
Yeah, and I think that as we move into this age of AI and a lot of slop, a lot of content that's just instantaneously generated and flooding the timeline, it's that trust that you've built that is the most, excuse me, valuable, right? That's the moat. I think really think that, and that's why you see every single company now becoming a media company as well, right? They need to be direct to consumer, and you've been doing this for light years ahead of a lot of the other competition. And I think that your methodology and who you pick in terms of who your sponsors are and making sure it's ethical. I heard you say that you did have BlockFi, but then you dropped them before things got shady, right?
Yeah. Not only that, we dropped them and we immediately were like, dude, you should not use BlockFi. And I feel bad. Like Zach Prince was on the show a few times in the early days. It was after the last time he came out where I was like, all right, we need to drop these guys as a sponsor. It was when they launched their yield product, where they said they were going to lend out people's Bitcoin that were engaged in their collateralized lending product to get yield for people on the platform. And as we all know, there's only 21 million Bitcoin. There's no bailouts. There's no printing. And that was a risk that I was not willing to thrust our user base or audience into. And so they were our sponsor when they were simply just vanilla Bitcoin collateralized lending platform. But once they added that yield product, we said, this is a bit too risky. And that's like a confidence builder too, because it's like you have this VC backed company. It was valued at $4 billion at its peak. And they don't understand these like core fundamentals of not only how Bitcoin works, but how risk management under a Bitcoin standard works.
And then, do you think there are too many or not enough Bitcoin podcasts at the moment?
I've always been somebody who many would consider an OG in the Bitcoin podcasting space. They always ask me, does it piss you off? Like, no, I think, again, the medium is the message, and people receive messages in different ways. I'm a very slow talker. I am not a shock jock. I meander outside of Bitcoin quite frequently on the show, and it's not for everybody. I'm very, very comfortable admitting that. Like, there's different tastes for different people, and so there's more shows that can sort of appeal to different types of people. That's better, in my opinion.
I agree. I mean, as somebody who just started this year, I'm in that camp as well. I think the more the merrier. There are still lots of people who don't have this message yet, haven't really heard of Bitcoin or had it broken down over 8 years of TFTC, like your listeners have. So join the show. If anybody wants to start a podcast, go out and do it. It's easier than ever, and it's fun. And you get to talk to people like Marty. So I know you a little bit of the TFTC founding story, but I really don't know how you got started with 1031. What is the origin story of you and the VC?
Yeah, so we're a Bitcoin investment platform. We do more than venture at this point. A few years in, so the origin story there is, I mean, Matt and I obviously we've been doing Rabbit Hole Recap for almost 8 years now, and a running theme on that show over the first 5 years of the show, 4 years of the show, was us basically opining about how it was insane that all these crypto funds were raising hundreds of millions, billions of dollars in aggregate and throwing it at all these shit products and affinity scams. And we had obviously a pretty big network within the Bitcoin specific industry of companies that were struggling to raise money, trying to build products that are desperately needed for Bitcoin. Our view is that Bitcoin is the only thing worth paying attention to. And we need more Bitcoin specific products and services. And so the origin story of us joining 1031 was Grant and Jonathan, the co-founders of 1031. They had raised a small family and friends fund one, and sort of deployed that. And Matt and I had known Grant from the New York Bitcoin scene. He was in New York as well pre-COVID. And then during COVID, when everybody was flying to Austin once a month because it was the only bit devs that was up and running during COVID, Grant was one of those individuals that was flying down there. I'd flown down there, and I think Grant and Jonathan had sort of validated, like, hey, I think there's something here in terms of investing in Bitcoin specific companies. And Matt and I had obviously identified that this is a problem, and we have this massive network. I've got a background in investing, and we decided, like, hey, let's join forces and really do this. And so in 2021, that's when we decided to join forces. At the time, Michael Tanguma over at OnRamp was on. He was seeing this as well. And so we basically went all in on 1031, and basically think it's an incredible pairing. Obviously, Matt and I have been talking about this stuff for years. We like to think that we know Bitcoin pretty well, understand where the landmines are, and understand who are serious builders in the space and are building products that are needed. And so, yeah, we joined forces with Grant and Jonathan to basically go raise money specifically dedicated to funding people building out Bitcoin specific infrastructure.
And when you are looking for these companies to invest in, I mean, are there more opportunities than you can invest in, or are you searching for things to deploy the money?
There's certainly a ton of opportunities out there. I think our sort of mentality is we want to go big with people that we think, or companies that we think are going to go big themselves and do very well. And so that's our strategies. And then timing is a big thing. Like part of our thesis is that there's going to be an order of operations to Bitcoin's success. You need certain things to exist before sort of more exotic or complex infrastructure can be built out. And so first 4 years is really focusing on that front end of the order of operations, mining infrastructure companies, exchanges, payments, Bitcoin collateralized lending, financial services, things like that, and leaning into them. And that's what I think a big part of this next cycle will be focused on, this sort of intersection of Bitcoin and credit, using Bitcoin as collateral. And so I think if you look at our portfolio and some of the announcements from the companies, that view, that theme is sort of expressed in how we're allocating capital.
And so as part of this job, you are talking to founders all the time, right? Mm-hmm. And that is the most pivotal part of all of this, what traits and non-negotiables do you look for in founders that you invest in?
They're sort of dog fooding their own, not only their own products, but their own mentality. Like living on a Bitcoin center, obviously. Strike, I talked about Jack earlier. That's our largest investment. We're the largest investor in Strike, and I think Jack is exemplifies what we look for. Like he lives on a Bitcoin standard. He eat, breathes, and sleeps Bitcoin. Not only that, before Strike, he was building out Zap. It was one of the sort of early pioneers of the Lightning Network, and so people that have really sort of come to know Bitcoin, because that's important. Like I think time in Bitcoin is just as is extremely important to understand again where these landmines are and what you need to, because there's a steep learning curve, particularly when it comes to understanding the Bitcoin protocol, second layers, how they interact, how you need to build your products, how you need to secure the Bitcoin of your customers. I mean, so another example of this is Anchor Watch, like Rob Hamilton, and I mean, he's been the Bitcoin script nerd for many years. He's been a long time. Rabbit Hole Recap, Die Hard, and somebody that we are very confident actually understands the minute details of the protocol and that are necessary to build a product like Anchor Watch, leveraging something like Miniscript. And so I think it's like dog fooding, having been around for long enough to really understand the protocol. And then most importantly, having a Bitcoin standard mindset for your business where it's like, hey, it's not VC. It's not, we're not like a venture backed company like you would expect 10 years ago, where it's raise as much money as possible, grow as fast as possible while throwing revenue and profitability to the wind. It's like, no, we actually need to reverse that. We need to find product market fit, get to revenue and profitability as quickly as possible, and scale up along the way as efficiently as possible. So it's like low head count, stretching human resources, human capital resources as far as they can go, and doing a lot more with less.
And of course, I mean, VC, you think of Silicon Valley, and there's a lot of charlatans and frauds over in that world. Does Bitcoin act as a filter in terms of who even comes to you with ideas, or do you still have to weed out some people who are like, oh no, got to stay away from that stuff?
Yeah, it certainly does. And that's the thing. Like we've had a great amount of success over the last 4 years too, where we have a portfolio of 35 companies, and that's actually, we've gotten to a point where the founders within the portfolio, and like real recognize real, like they're great sort of funneling of people building good stuff as well. And so yeah, I think Bitcoin certainly acts as a filter. The builders in the space know that we don't really invest in things that want to cater to every shitcoin and other L2s or other protocols, if you will. So that's just a natural filter. We're looking for people who are specifically focused on Bitcoin infrastructure, and that is a massive filter, because there's a ton of easy money if you're able, or if you're willing to sort of dabble in shitcoinery.
Yes, we all know that, of course. But the other aspect of business that you have put a lot of time into over the years is mining. And we don't need to get too deep into mining, but right now, hash price is hitting all-time lows. Is this the hardest time you've ever seen for Bitcoin miners? And what is the general sentiment of the industry at the moment?
I mean, I think it's hard for some miners, but not all. I would actually say, even despite the fact that hash price is at an all-time low, it's certainly not ideal if you're mining. But with that being said, I think over the last 6 years specifically, and more importantly, post-Chinese mining ban, the industry itself has become extremely privy to the economics of mining. And I think the miners that have been around for long enough really understand, like, hey, we need to get our electricity price, our capex down as low as possible. And I think over the last 5 years, we've had this cycle where 2020 price goes up, Chinese mining ban hits, people flood, spend a ton of money, waste a ton of capital, realized they got over their skis. You had that whole ASIC collateralized lending craze that turned out to be a terrible decision. And I think a lot of miners, especially those that were around during that period, have learned their lessons and understand, like, hey, we need to get cheap electricity. We need to keep our builds, our cost per megawatt build out down as low as possible. And we've seen that trending in the right direction. So if this hash price were to have manifested in 22, 23 would be a lot worse. But I think the industry is a lot smarter than it was in those days.
The most competitive business on earth, right? It's brutal, but thank goodness for them. And we're over a zettahash. So people obviously find it worthy of doing.
Yeah, exactly. And there's another thing too. I think there was a variable introduced this year which makes some miners less sensitive to hash price, which is the depreciation tax deduction. And again, the fact that you can depreciate 100% of your ASICs in the first year, you're seeing a ton of tax arbitrage enter the space too. And so you have a bunch of people who had a windfall of cash buying ASICs, depreciating the cost, and then they're willing to wait a few years to recoup those funds via Bitcoin just because they're getting that tax benefit.
Yes. Okay. We're coming towards the end of the show here, and I want to have some fun with you. Watching Rabbit Hole Recap, you definitely, of course, love to, as you said, love to go on to tangents, right? And talk about conspiracy theories. And I'm a conspiracy theorist too. I think that's a common thing amongst Bitcoiners here. No problem with conspiracy theories, and I think they should be talked about. Matt says we got to reel it back in. You got to reel it back into reality. But you actually yourself have been classified as a spreader of misinformation.
Yes.
Officially in a scientific study, right?
The Center for Countering Digital Hate. Oh. And they've put me on a couple lists, I think for COVID and global warming specifically.
So in that regard, what are some of your favorite conspiracy theories, and what should people be talking about more that they're not right now?
Well, I think COVID is, top of mind for me these days, because I think that was an abject crime against humanity. Not only the lockdowns and the economic damage that they wrought, but I think the vaccine rollout was criminal. And there was a conspiracy behind the scenes. And that's the other thing, conspiracy theory. I think Dave Collins said it best. If you don't believe that men and women conspire to do things, you are what we call an idiot. And so this whole conspiracy theory label, which was started by the CIA post JFK, is an attempt to sort of discredit people, to not have them unearth uncomfortable truths about how people in power are conspiring to do things. And I think COVID, I mean, the vaccine rollout, I think you can see it in a bunch of different data sets. Maybe that's another podcast people should go back and watch. If we're thinking about one to watch this year, is the episode I did with Jessica Rose, who's an immunologist. And her and Kevin McKernan sort of did a study on Pfizer vaccines and proved that there's SV40 fragments in these vaccines, which is a cancer accelerator. And if you look at the rates of turbo cancer, excess deaths, you look at life insurance claims, they're going up. And the fact that I believe 80% of the world, at least 80% of the United States, got these poisonous injections is not okay. And there are ramifications. I just saw Jessica actually tweeted earlier today, there was another study that came out that, what'd it say, coming from Gavin Publishers, detection of Pfizer BioNTech messenger RNA COVID-19 vaccine in human blood, placenta, and semen. So we also detected that the vaccine mRNA in the sperm of all 3 vaccinated donors who produced sperm. Interestingly, this contrasts with the presence of SARS-CoV-2 itself. And so there's going to be long-term ramifications for this. You have people years after getting vaccinated that still have this sort of poison in their semen. And what is the ramifications of that on an intergenerational level? And it worries me deeply in the fact that there hasn't been a bow tied on that era, and that atrocity really pisses me off. And I think it's pretty clear, despite what the mainstream media would have you believe that Anthony Fauci, the CEO of Pfizer, Moderna, the CDC at the time under Walensky, and these labs in China, they were all colluding. I mean, the fact that the NIH funded the COVID research in the first place is insane. The fact that our tax dollars created this lab-borne disease and that really fucked up the world for many years and many years to come is, again, a crime against humanity that people should be pissed off about and talking more about. And unfortunately, there's this sort of cognitive dissonance that exists, particularly among the masses who themselves got the vaccine, that they really don't want to admit that they got duped by these psychopaths.
Yeah, man. There are so many questions still left to be answered about that whole entire era. And I want to salute you for actually having a platform at the time and be willing to talk about that stuff. There's definitely been an easing in terms of what you can talk about on certain platforms and whatnot regarding the COVID fiasco, but you were right there in the middle of it. And I was watching, I was listening, and I was cheering you on. And so we need more people like Marty Bent to be willing to take up the microphone, talk about truth for the commoner, and spread the good word about Bitcoin and things that really matter. Marty, yeah, do you have any thoughts about that and speaking out?
Yeah, I mean, do more of it. I think we've gotten to this place of complacency where I think people feel more comfortable that Trump's in office. Whether or not that's the right feeling is another topic of discussion. But don't get complacent and just forget that these things happen. Whether it's the financial crisis, COVID, these things. There hasn't been, in my opinion, a sufficient sort of retrospective and most importantly, like justice brought for any of these things. Like the government, central banks, big industry is really fucking over the common man. And if we don't speak up, speak out, and get justice for these things, they're just going to continue to do it. And it may seem like we're in relative peace times, particularly after COVID, but don't think that these people will not step on the gas pedal at some point in the future and try to do it again. There's reason to believe that was just a test run there. There could be other stuff down the road. I think Anthony Fauci, the CEO of Pfizer, the Walensky, these bricks, they should all be tried and brought to justice, whatever that is, whether it's a jail sentence or a public execution. We'll have to decide down the line. I know it's controversial, but I would not. I think the latter may be justified. We'll have to find out through a trial. But what these people did is pure evil, and you should not be okay with it.
Yes. Over time, hopefully, truth comes to light, and I think Bitcoin will be an accelerant for all of that. And that's the world we live in, though. And yeah, it's happened in the past. It will probably happen again. And so you got to be ready. You got to be strong mentally, physically, and spiritually. And listening to Bitcoin podcasts helps to get you there.
It does. It does. You make sure you're getting your 40 hours a weekend.
40 hours.
That's important.
40 hours. All right, Marty, this has been an absolute pleasure. I'm sure everybody knows where to find you, but please shout out everything that you're doing.
Just find me on X, Marty Bent, and you'll find out what I'm doing. I talk about it a lot, so you can find me there. That's where I hang out a lot. And actually, go to primal.net/Marty Bent. I'm on Nostr as well, doing the same thing.
And he might just zap you. All right, everybody, Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been a pleasure. And Marty, we got to do this again.
We definitely do, Rob. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for making it to the end of the video. If you could drop a like and a share, it would help in our mission to accelerate adoption. If you're looking for more Bitcoin signal, join over 10,000 readers of our newsletter, Bitcoin News Weekly. Every Monday morning, we send out the biggest headlines of Bitcoin to keep you in the know in under 5 minutes. Links below in the description. Then come hang with us live every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern. We break it all down live on stream with a new guest, and you can add your 2 sats in the chat. See you next week.